It's just a workshop.
Yep, just a workshop.
Yeah, but I just.
Yeah, no action. Okay.
Hi, it is July 11, 2023, 5 o'clock. Call this workshop, City Council workshop, into session at this time. No quorum is needed here. With that said, also silence your phones to avoid interruptions in the meeting. And if you would join me in invocation and salute the flag, I appreciate it. Lord God, we thank you for the blessings that you've given to each one of us. We good stewards of all that you've placed forth in front of us to do. God, direct this meeting and watch over our city. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen.
Salute to the flags, the American flag.
Oh, no, can I see that?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
To the Texas flag.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible.
See there, it's right there in front of you. I know, whatever my glasses are.
Let the record show that we can practice on the Texas.
I got it.
You also have the right.
But you were reading it, I bet.
Is that illegal?
No. I just took this from you.
Mayor, if you're ready, I'll go ahead and start.
I'm ready.
So tonight, we're going to start with kind of just an update on what happened with the water main breaks and do a really quick overview on that. And our engineers have a recommendation on a very quick fix. So I want to talk about that a little bit. To start this off, I think it'd be best, since we're in a public meeting and we're projecting to the masses in the world, I'm just going to read the email I sent to kind of capture the issues, and then I'll turn it over to Catherine to talk a little bit about our short-term idea here. So this was sent last night regarding Friday, the water main breaks. Good afternoon all. I'm ready to provide an update on the water main breaks that have occurred at the intersection of Liberty Street and Lone Star Parkway. Around 7:30 p.m. this past Friday, the city, Mike Montgomery, was notified of several homes with loss of water pressure. Mike Montgomery and Dave McCorkadell responded, checked out our system stats, and subsequently started searching the area for the physical break. At around 8:10 p.m., a representative for the subcontractor that busted through the line contacted Mike Montgomery from the scene. The break was on Arnett Easley's property. Arnett just happened to show up there while the subcontractor was there, gave the subcontractor Mike's number, so that's how Mike was called by the subcontractor. Let's see. Arnett gave the contact Mike, so Mike and Dave responded and began coordinating the repair effort. H2O, our contractor for water, responded and they had the break fixed and normal pressure back up around 1:45 Saturday morning. Okay. So the two issues that we've identified, issue one, contractors intermittently cutting through our infrastructure. Issue number two on this, in this case, is that water plant number 2 is still down for repairs. So whenever I do an analysis like this, I'm going to capture the issues, I'm going to capture the rules that govern those issues. I'm going to provide my analysis, the staff's analysis, and then give you a recommendation. So for us, the rules for this particular incident was the contractor has to call 811 to do located the utilities, which he did. Okay, we didn't require a permit, but we had to do an 811 call for located. Is that correct, Mike?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So he called, we went out and did a locate. So as I kind of explained in here, I can get into this a little bit, and I'll defer to Mike. So when the infrastructure is laid in, the new infrastructure requires a locate wire to be put in. So when we go out and do these locates for the utilities, we've got equipment that can sense where that line exactly is. We mark it, the contractor comes out. If you've ever seen the flags in the line or the spray paint, those are what it looks like when the utilities are marked. There are areas in the city that do not have the tracer wire in it. This is one of those areas. So we don't know where these pipes are. The only thing our crews can do is locate the valves and try to do an estimate based on where those two valves are in a straight line, and they'll mark that line. I think we probably do our best to try to do it exact. That was the case for this. We marked the line We're about 5 feet off of where the utility actually was. He bored through, and when he was pulling the drill bit back, or the stem, that's when he hit the line that broke it. So we didn't have a tracer wire, we weren't able to mark it properly. The contractor came out, did what he was supposed to do, but busted through it anyway. So that's issue number one. Issue number two, obviously, is the water plant number 2 is down. Had that plant been up, we would not have had the pressure loss we had. And I don't know if we would have had as intensive, we probably would have had as an intensive an issue, but still probably would have had some problems.
Correct.
Okay. So for us, the two issues, number one, we need to come up with some innovative solutions to identify where these utilities are that are unmapped. I don't know what that innovation is. We're going to have to look and find it. We're going to have to believe there's something out there where you can put it through the system and maybe it pulls GPS points out of it. And they can do that on a bloodstream. Why can't they do that on a plant?
Smart meter.
Something, I don't, if you guys know of any ideas, please send them to me. We're going to look at that. Other issue is water plant number 2. We need to do a repair on that short term and then also come back and do a full long-term fix on that plant number 2. So I'll defer to Catherine on that to talk about what we have now for a short-term solution and then what we can do for long-term. Yeah.
Before you start, I was going to ask, since the city was remiss in providing for the contractor where the line was, the city cannot file a claim?
We're just going to file a claim. Whether they're going to let us, whether they're going to honor that claim or not, we're still going to go after the insurance.
Okay, yeah.
companies,
And I think there was a good faith effort to locate it as properly as we can without doing full excavation. So within reasonable means, a good faith effort was put forth to put the water line
But
where.
but since we're not going to file a claim, I'm happy with that.
So
Water plant number 2 is located.
water plant number 2 is located down Houston Street, south of 105. Houston, Stewart Street.
Old City Hall.
Correct. Correct. So in the April timeframe, we performed water plant inspection. This year was an interior tank inspection. So we took the ground storage tank offline at water plant 2. Part of that process, there was sand in the bottom of the tank that had to be cleaned out so that we could inspect the floor as well. When the sand was cleaned out, we inspected it, tank was put back online. The tank started leaking around the bottom. And so we took the tank back offline so we weren't continually losing water for the leak. I met with Jacob Williams with H2O this morning on site. There are a couple of, so there's pitting in the metal where it's starting to kind of eat away. There are some places where the pits have become holes. And so what the plan is, we're going to put the product is called Sikaflex, and it's a food grade sealant, essentially like a caulk, basically, and plug up the holes. It's a short-term fix. Jacob gave an estimate today for about $4,000 for materials and labor. Should be done in about 2 weeks once materials come in, and then we'll be able to get the tank back online. Like I said, it's a short-term fix, so looking forward into the winter, we're going to be looking at a potential floor replacement or recoat, something to get this to be a long-term fix. This happened about 5 years ago, last time we took the tank offline, and the fix at the time was welded patches. The concern now is if we were to go in and do a blast and weld patches, it would quickly become a much larger issue. So this is our short-term solution, we take it online, and then we'll start talking long-term solutions towards the winter.
So what was that plant that?
You think?
2004?
This was 2004 or 5 timeframe?
So we use a product offshore that's good for pressure. It's called Belgium.
Is that one element?
This one.
Okay.
Belgium. There's the application is easy. Once you get last, they clean that over, come in and take it. There's no breakers. It's not super cheap, but it's not super expensive. It's cheaper than we think.
Yeah,
Food grade?
It's wastewater or is it potable water?
bottled water.
You have to talk to a lawyer to agree with it, but it's like concrete, it's made like steel.
Yeah, ultimately, the floor is not getting any better, and this isn't the first time it's come up, so floor replacement is in the city's future anyway. So this will get us into the winter when it's generally recommended to take a tank offline and look at floor replacement then.
Yeah, because when before it was, I think that sand was filling in all the holes. And so, of course, clean it out, get it stuck on the floor, and part of that process, they power wash it out, they get all the sand, they get it clean, have a great look. And now all those little pits that were still had material left, punched their way through. So we HO got a quote to do a blast and a coating, and it was like $47,000 or so to do the coating on the floor. And then the blasting was $700 per patch. And so again, they go and blast it, and now we have 30 patches, 50 patches, we're doubling the price of that. So we're
Can you
talking
use expected abrasive blasting to design pressure water blast?
we can try that. It will be depending on the coating spec or what kind of profile they need to get the adhesion. The other thing that I've been looking into recently for another client is a dry ice blast. I have not personally used it, but it's dust free because there's dry ice. So we're really kind of as a part of the garage, so they still. So we're going through a couple options to see, but we've either done sodium or sand or sand-like material, but still it's the same.
So drag it use extreme explosive areas because it is a big spark. We're not sandblasting it as well.
So along with this, I'm going to look at best practices that other cities have with regard to, I don't want to call it permitting, but if there's something that we can do that is going to maybe put another layer of oversight on a contractor that's going to be working on our utilities, I want to see if that option exists and try to implement that. So we'll be also looking at that. So I think short term, we're going to go ahead and move forward with this fix and have that done within a couple weeks. And then long term, you're going to see this come back in the budget with the CIP for next year. Stan?
The short-term fixes, they're gonna shut the water down? Or can we send it
No, so right now the tank is open, and so what they'll do is they'll go and they'll wire brush the pits just to get the surface corrosion off, put the sealant on it, and I think it had a 3-day cure time.
7 days.
7-day cure time. So they're trying to do the work on Friday. So then next week it cures, and then there's a disinfection process. So that disinfected, they have to pull two passing bacteriological tests within 24 hours to then put it back online. So the system itself will operate as normal. In a normal situation, that water plant doesn't provide a lot of water. It's mostly from the plant off of 1097.
That's okay, it's about water in my house.
Correct. But the non-normal situation where that water plant was, half of its route to get over to this part of the city was cut off, then that tank is where it really reared its head.
How many locations do we get by typically a week?
We're probably in the neighborhood right now of 30-ish, 30, yeah.
And do we know exactly what areas we don't have tracer wiring?
Most of the area we don't have tracer line.
So maybe until we get that fixed, we can scrutinize those a little bit.
Yeah, most of the locates that come in though are for new houses.
Okay.
Yeah, and we may get 2 or 3 locates for the same house. Plumbing may call one in, electrical may call one in.
If we get another one out there, we may want to just post somebody out there.
So
With
we know where it's at.
There's another device we use, it's called a smart feed. When we pick up that line, we'll pull line and send it back to the beach. We put a smart feed in a lot of times, so we can see when it slows down or when it stops, or whatever. So we can see if there's corrosion or if there's paraphernalia or whatever. It'll tell you speed, it'll tell you where you want to,
Yeah,
and it's all GPS.
okay.
And they can also, a lot of them, they can insert through the hydrant
Yeah,
and get down in, and also some of them will do sounding, so you can get some materials, you can get some, if there's wall density issues with the pipe, to be able to kind of do an assessment that way.
Yeah.
But we can definitely,
yeah, that may be a project that we could do and then place some permanent marker pipes in place, like they do on gas, so we know where it's at in the future. that's a great way to identify it once and get coordinates on it and map it, but going back out in the field, time after time over the years is where the problem's at, making sure we know exactly.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, this is more of a question, I'm not trying to belabor the point, but have you seen where a city would require potholes? So oil and gas, if we're crossing into potholes all the time and show clearances where that part of a process they have to pothole or fund potholing and physical confirmation. That's
That could easily fall
It's a
into-
lot more work.
What does that accomplish, the problem?
Verify the location, so in this case, it would have been a physical
So
eyes
actually
on it.
paddle down to the
Right.
line?
Yeah.
Okay.
But, I mean, that puts a lot more burden on, if Public Works is doing, 30 locates a week and trying to pothole each time, that we could tie multiple guys for a whole week
Oh, yeah.
to do that. But,
Okay, we can talk about
Yeah.
it. So, anybody have any questions about the break or fix? Just want to give you guys a quick update while we're here. And kind of rolling into wastewater treatment plant, I know I have it as number 2, but while Catherine was sitting up here, we just roll into that and let her roll the analysis, and we can talk about that committee, Charlie.
So what Chris is passing out, so we recently completed an analysis of your wastewater treatment system. This is looking towards the future. As we've been discussing with every feasibility study that comes up, it's time for the city to start planning actively for an expansion of your wastewater treatment plant facilities. So as y'all know or may know, the city has 2 wastewater plants. You have your main one off of Buffalo Springs down behind Chick-fil-A and shops at Montgomery Center. And then your other plant, which is currently inactive, is off of 149 across from the tanks, across from the Cornerstone Church. The analysis that we did, we looked at an expansion at either facility. So there are, with 2 plants, there are 2 options for where you can expand it. So walking you through the analysis that Chris just passed out, we looked at the existing capacities. That's all going to be very similar to what you've seen in your feasibility study. Right now, we're looking at about 46% of our existing capacity. What H2O reported last month was higher than that, so we are continuing to see capacities increasing. When you reach 75% of your permitted capacity for 3 consecutive months, the TCEQ requires you, the way they word is initiate engineering and financial planning. Something like this covers it, seeking out funding covers it, beginning design especially checks that box. The next threshold is when your flows exceed 90% of your permit for 3 consecutive months, the TCEQ requires you to begin construction of an expansion. Those 2 thresholds, based on our projections that we put together and which we, again, present to y'all with every feasibility study, we are looking to exceed 75% around the 2nd quarter of next year and exceed 90% around the 4th quarter of next year. So next year, 2024, close to the end of next year. And that's based on developers' projections, their build-outs, and anticipated growth as well. A couple other things that we looked at the on-site lift station. So lift station number 1 is the on-site lift station at your current wastewater plant, excuse me. Lift station number 2 is the on-site lift station at the Town Creek wastewater treatment plant. Currently, it's just functioning as a lift station. It continues on through the system. We evaluated both of those to look at their capacities. Lift station 1 has sufficient capacity that was designed that way when it was relocated a few years ago. Lift station 2, it has a capacity of 144,000 gallons per day, and it's currently seeing about 114,000 gallons per day. So it does need to be expanded as well. Going into the 2 options that we really evaluated, option 1 would be to expand the Stewart Creek wastewater treatment plant from a 0.4 MGD, million gallons per day, up to a 0.8 MGD facility. So you currently have a bullseye facility, you'd be putting a very similar one right next to it on the same property. That option requires not only expanding the plant, but upsizing, switching out the pumps in lift station 1 that are currently sized for the current flows. You have to swap those out to larger pumps. Regardless, you need to expand lift station 2 to handle the increased flows that are expected. And then looking at this first fold-out sheet, this is attachment A. There is a gravity sewer line that runs from right in front of the office building on Lone Star Parkway, a little bit west of that, all the way down across in front of Kroger and across 105. That gravity line would also need to be upsized if all of the flow in the city were to be going to the Stewart Creek plant. So there's a lot of kind of incidental improvements that need to be done with this option.
So, yeah, my question is, why would we move all the sewer to the south of town? I'm struggling with that. Why would we just build one in a different location?
So that's going to be option 2. So going to option
And the reason, just to answer that question, why it's even an option, is operationally having all at one facility, you're operating one plant, it's centralized, but in this case, this centralized plant that's existing is on the far opposite side of town from Hills of Town Creek and these other elements. Right.
And we're not a huge metropolis, it's 5 minutes over there.
Right.
Exactly. So option 2 is then looking at demolishing the existing Town Creek wastewater treatment plant. As I mentioned, it's currently offline. It's been offline for years. So it's just been kind of sitting there waiting for when it would be potentially rebuilt. In its current state, it doesn't make financial sense to rehab it. It would make more sense to demo it and put a new clean facility in. The technology that's out there, you don't really see a whole lot anymore, and so it would be bringing it up to current standards as well and putting in current technology, so to speak. What goes along with that is, and again, an expansion of lift station 2. Like I said, that has to be done regardless, and then just the expansion at that site itself. You wouldn't need to expand that gravity line that I mentioned in option 1. The other advantage of option 2, going with the Town Creek plant, is that it gives you more flexibility going into the future even more. So what we would propose is at the Town Creek plant to build it in such a way that it can be easily expanded. You can add on additional basins and give it more capacity as needed. That we are not just sending all of your flow to one side of the city. You've got options. There are a couple of force mains that, if needed, as we're balancing flows between the plants, could easily be turned the opposite direction to keep balancing flows between the plants. So it gives the city more flexibility. You do have 2 separate plants, so operations are in 2 different locations, but ultimately not the end of the world when it comes to running the system.
Which, so right now, we're basically just using one.
Correct. So as far as the wastewater treatment plant itself, so looking at that map that you're looking at, everything in the city goes to lift station 1. 100% of the flows end up at lift station 1 and are treated at the Stewart Creek plant. About half the
Single
flow.
point of failure.
Correct.
So that's
What did you ask?
I wanted to know that, to make sure that I understood that all of our sewage treatment was going to one plant, and there's one line coming in there, right? So that's called single point of failure in a risk society, and that's a bad idea. Maybe we gotta fix that.
Right. So putting the Town Creek plant back online does give you a little bit of redundancy in case something happens at a plant. You can wet haul to the other one. Gives you a little bit of options, both for future planning and practicality of operations. So that is ultimately our recommendation: is to expand or demolish and rebuild the Town Creek wastewater treatment plant to be a 0.4 NGD. That's 400,000 gallons per day plant. Knowing that it could potentially be expanded to 0.8, or Stewart Creek could be expanded to 0.8, depending on how the city grows, and looking at regional growth and where it would make the most sense once we get to that further stage later on. We also looked at permit. So part of this, so the city has maintained the permit at the Town Creek wastewater treatment plant for years. It's easier to upgrade a permit and renew it than it is to get a whole brand new permit. So the city has maintained that permit. We would need to do a permit amendment and take it from its current capacity up to the 0.4 NGD. So that would be part of it. We looked at floodplain issues. And there's a little bit that we need to be considered, but nothing that we see get in the way of the design, anything like that. Looking at page 6 of the report, we have the summary recommendation, which again we outline recommending with option 2 at the Town Creek plant. And then kind of an estimated timeline of what next. So the next step from here would be to authorize city staff to prepare requests for proposals for engineering services to do the design of the plant. Would be the next step, as well as authorize a permit amendment to begin that process. That can be a longer process, looking at close to a year sometimes. So the next steps would be to do those at the same time, get engineering kicked off and the permit amendment kicked off. And then estimated timeline that we've got here, your construction would be complete in July 2025.
And so, right, and so the kind of one thing to note, so Catherine said earlier that, the capacity is projected in 2024. That is conservative, so we're projecting that we have an additional 40,000 to 50,000 gallons a day going through the plant now than what we see. So it's intended, and we want, the one thing about what we've all seen and been hearing, that governments don't move as fast as private entities, so it's getting ahead of it and ready. So we can't, this has gone through the torque. So Randy's looked at it, we met with him, gone over the results, and he's in agreement with it. I think the biggest thing with him is just kind of the projections. So we're always a little bit more conservative on our projections.
So when you did the calculation for option 2, how did you split the flow? Was it like a balanced flow, or how did you do that?
So the way we split it is everything that's currently going to lift station 2 would go to the Town Creek facility.
Not the station, but the Town Creek, when you did the 2 options, I guess, so when you tried the balance between Town Creek and Stewart Creek.
As far as flows,
Yes. Which area is it balanced, or is it just going to take the percentage overflow, or is it going to run the story through Stewart Creek?
so what will go to Town Creek is the majority, the west side of town. 149 is not exactly, but it's kind of a rough dividing line between the east and the west side of the city. Town Creek is going to see more growth, is what we've projected. Redford Meadows will go there, Hills of Town Creek would go to Town Creek. Anything that goes on the west side. The way it's looking, it would be close to a 50-50 split, maybe a little bit more going to Town Creek, 60-40, but it was close. It's not a lion's share at one plant or the other.
But more importantly, on keeping it, it's not so much trying to keep it balanced as it is trying to keep as much flowing naturally to that spot. Yeah, you don't want to pump it across town if you don't have to pump it across. Even if one's taking a little bit more load, it's getting there naturally, then that's more important.
The other question is that the apartments that are going behind the fields, I can't remember the name of it.
Watershed?
Or, yeah, behind these sheds. That's on a gravity flow line, is that right?
Ultimately, so they're going to have to put in a lift station, and that will get pumped. Ultimately, it'll go to the Stewart Creek plant.
Right. So they will put in a private lift station to pump it to in front of Pizza Shack to go by gravity down to Stewart Creek.
I have a related question. In the end of May, we put a new sewer line in under Town Creek because of the situation that we got there with the existing line. And I was under the impression that existing line was 70% capacity of the town sewer. Does either one of these plants eliminate some of that percentage so we don't have one little like dangerous spot that could, essentially shut us down like the water situation?
It does. So that line that you're talking about, that's the force main coming from lift station 2. So that force main would ultimately get decommissioned. So it would no longer be an active line going under there. All of that flow would get treated at the Town Creek plant.
So it's going to be diverted to basically.
The flow that's going through that line is coming from 2, so it would never leave lift station 2 then. It would just go straight to the plant.
So back in the day, the original sewer plant was at Town Creek. what that lift station did was pump it to the top of what they call the headworks. When they built the new sewer plant, they just rerouted that pump and sending everything across town. This is just going to go back to the way it originally was, where it'll just pump it to the top of the headworks instead of pumping it across town.
Likely what would be done is with that force main, it's now lowered, is that's one of our options. So depending on how development trends, there's a lift station that pumps up Buffalo Springs to Lone Star Parkway, and both those lines are right next to each other and turn, so we could connect them and pump it back the other way if needed to balance out those flows. And the same thing exists going, there's an unused force main today that goes in front of McCoy's all the way to Lone Star Parkway. So originally, the lift station that was where Chick-fil-A is had a second force main that they could turn on and literally pump the sewage just around the city. And so it gives us with those options of we connect these two pieces and these two pieces, we can change where the lift stations go to keep those flows balanced. Because if Redbird goes or doesn't go, or Building Concrete 5 or wherever, that's going to change that balance again.
So those old sewer lines, what is the materials that we use for those?
They're all the pressure, so the pressure lines are PVC that are out there. There is a lot of thin wall pipe that we found over the years and Mike has found over the years. The gravity lines are, most of the old ones are what's being rehabbed that are more the contract for last meeting. And those were a mix of clay, truss, and PVC pipe, if I remember correctly.
Okay. The sewer line that is on College Street that goes through Lone Star Estates
Yes.
to that sewer plant, that line is getting rehabbed
That's correct.
in this project that we discussed.
Correct. It's getting rehabbed in the one you just awarded.
And so it takes a whole lot through there. I just want to make sure that it's adequate when we put on that sewer plant.
Yes, it is. So a lot of that is a 12-inch line. 12-inch line has a lot of capacity in it. There are little portions that were an 8-inch or a 10-inch, and those are going to get upsized to a 12, so that there's plenty of capacity going into the plant.
When is this coming to council?
Great question, what's the next step?
Next step is to authorize staff to prepare requests for proposals.
We need to decide an option. Obviously, we need to decide an option so that before we do RFP.
Right.
You guys feel you want to workshop
Council
on this?
decides the option.
I think we're ready. I think
Okay.
motion to, we have a water engineer that spoke to me last night, so Mr. Londy, if you want to chime in, did you read it?
Yeah, I think it's a little about some expertise, but as associated, I think the option, Town Creek, construction of two, option 2 is probably the best option to go forward with. The question would be, is it going to be a package plan or a construct in place plan, which was not really clear from the analysis. There's 2 different options. You can have the package plan built off-site and brought in and hook up to it, or you can construct in place. So that was just our main question from the analysis.
And I would say that would be something that I completely agree with Brian, we talked about it before, is part of the RFQ, is to, because this gives you the sizing, it doesn't give you the final layout, because there's options of styles of plants and how you lay it out. Package plants are steel, so you have steel and wastewater, it's a little bit more maintenance versus concrete, but from a cash flow perspective, it is cheaper typically to put those in, and then you could, let's do a phase of this, and then we can do a concrete plant in the future, and kind of phase some of that out. It's just, we can go through those, that part of the RFQ is to go through those options. I would recommend to go through those options with a preliminary engineering report, which we require as part of the RFQ, are to lay out those options, give a more detailed cost estimate, site plan, so that we can discuss again, okay, which way do we want to go? What is, and really considering the life cycle cost as well.
Yeah, I think it's time for a package.
The option 2, so we would be enlarging it, or is it going to be the same size as Stewart Creek?
Ultimately, it'll be the same size as Stewart Creek. Stewart Creek is a 0.4 MGD. We'd recommend to put a 0.4 MGD at Town Creek as well.
Which is quite a bit bigger than was ever there.
Right, so I want to say the original size was 175,000 gallons per day. That's what the permit that you currently hold is for. So it's going to have significantly
The
more.
land there will do this.
It will. So the site has significant elevation change already, which is actually helpful for a wastewater plant. You can move it through the process by gravity, and you don't have to do any kind of intermediate pumping, anything like that. So the site will actually work in our favor.
Okay. My only other concern is the road that goes from 149 up to the sewer plant. I know it's not something we have to discuss at this moment, but I want to know some details
I think
on that
that,
road because it's not
I think that goes into the scope.
The scope of the project, it would almost need to be included to handle the
because I don't even know that it's
construction.
city.
Is it, that's what I was gonna say, is the road really city? Or is it just
No.
permission?
It's,
It's definitely not city property.
it's permission.
I don't know the details on that, I just know that it's definitely not right of way.
And if we're going to be doing construction,
Get it right somewhere
that
else.
We do have some frontage right near Town Creek. I don't know how wide that is, 150 feet wide or so. It is in floodplain, so we just have to be mindful, to take out whatever we put in. Fill materials and just ensure we get accommodated. But there is at least some access that directly goes to it.
so it's in the plan.
Yes, I would put that in there, and also,
Thank you.
you can approach, Mr. Easley and see if there's a way to get an easement or something across his property for access, and if there's a shared use or something, there's options there, and that definitely has to be part of it.
So one other question, I know we're talking about putting the same size as what we have. How much room does that give us for growth?
That takes you until about 2030 or so. And once we get out of those few years, projections are our best guess at how quickly things are going to develop. If the market changes or development suddenly falls through, it doesn't happen, that can shift. So 2030 is a harder target for us to pin down for sure. But this gets you to about out there, and then it'll be time to start talking about another
So
expansion.
that's my, so if we extend ourselves and say, okay, because we know that we're gonna have to either do another one in 7 years, what would it be to go here?
Do we have to totally demolish this and rebuild it all?
No.
No.
No, so both plants, so how their Stewart Creek plant setup is the lift station was sized, the actual structure was sized to handle twice the amount of flow. So it's just change out pumps, adding option 1, essentially. So now we can double it there at Stewart Creek. At Town Creek would be the exact same thing, is we would oversize the structure of the wet well, and then likely what we do is we'll size your aeration basins for today's flow, and then your chlorine content basin and ultimate, because you have a little bit more play with that, or at least design so you can add on those pieces. So it's not modular, but set up so pipes are stubbed out, the headworks is set up so it can split flows and add to
So we're not looking at
it.
building a whole other sewer street.
Correct, it would be in addition to either one. So both would then be in a situation that you don't, lift station is minor work, you add tankage capacity to either one depending on development trends. And do we have more on the east side, more on the west side, and we can make that decision years down the road.
And that's not considered cobbling something together? Okay, just making sure.
No, it's normal, so in your permits, normally what is done and what we would do is you would get it's a phased permit. So you get a phase 1, a phase 2, and an ultimate phase, or however many you need. Because you don't want, if, for example, we built a facility that was 1 million gallons a day, and you're only running 100,000 gallons a day through it, that also leads to issues because you're under.
You can overbuild it.
Yeah.
So it's a mix of right sizing, having enough free capacity, but not so little flow that it's hard for them to operate. So, lift station are the same way. It's, yes, it's great, we have this massive lift station, but if the pumps are sized so infrequently, it'll go septic before it actually pumps through, and it causes issues with your treatment process.
And I'm paying for this out.
Are you paying for it?
Just
Your
forget it.
checklist.
You gotta put it in your hand.
So that's something that we'd recommend goes into the RFP as well, is that the engineer that's selected can assist with finding and securing funding.
Because there's a lot of options out there, the city's seen them, but again, getting into it, getting the numbers down.
When you find funding, are you talking 50%, 75%, 10%?
Depends on which type of funding.
Okay.
Every funding option has a different,
We can apply for multiple?
you can.
Free is good.
Yeah. Add all the coupons you can.
Did another engineer suggest that between now and December, there is significant water treatment monies? Did I hear him say that right?
You talk about the meeting we have with our
Garcia,
work team.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're formula grants, so yes, there's money out there, and we require a match, and there's also hooks.
Yeah.
Other hooks that go with that, but yes, there is money out there.
Okay.
So are you guys done with this, then bring this back with an RFP for a regular meeting?
On,
Okay.
Option number 2?
Option 2.
we're all
Seems pretty clear.
okay with that?
Okay.
So you need Karen?
That's all I need.
Okay, so we've got 16 minutes, really only 10. In front of you is the draft charter for the Montgomery Transportation Advisory Committee. Not long after I got here, the mayor and I spoke about putting something together just to help us as a city work through some of these transportation mobility issues, help us rebuild our relationships with our outside agencies, and tap into the talent that's within our community to try and help move the city forward. So I'm just going to read the purpose really quick under Article 2. The committee is established with the primary mission of advising on all issues and projects related to transportation, traffic, pedestrian, mass within the city of Montgomery upon request of the city council or city administrator. The committee shall utilize our expertise, current best practices, and multimodal transportation planning and data to provide analysis recommendations. This charter is very basic. It's very simple, just outlines the qualifications of the committee members, the appointment process, and all the other stuff, the attendance, and so forth. Really, for tonight, obviously it's a workshop, so I will be bringing this back to you with the memorandums you want to a regular meeting to adopt this formally. However, if you guys want to move forward with this committee, really what I'd like you to chew on is the appointment process of the members, whether you want it to be a mayoral appointment directly, whether you just want to keep it as a city council appointment like the other boards and commissions. Really, that's what I bring this for tonight, and whatever other comments you might have about this.
Why do you call it a charter?
Because it's
That's
just,
a word that you used before.
yes, what do you guys call bylaws? Charter bylaws, just outlining the structure of the organization.
So to the question of how we want to appoint them, I would like to see a member of MEDC be required, and I'd like to see the police chief or a member of the police department be required. And then as far as mayoral appointment, I'm thinking 2 members of council and mayor agreement.
So all people on already city boards and nobody outside that?
No, just as far as appointment.
Oh,
To make an appointment, then the mayor, 2 members.
Bring those appointments back to the council for formal council appointment.
Just 2 members of council have to agree with the mayor.
So can we not bring it back, those appointments?
So you're not going to bring it back to city council, you're just going to have
Well, I mean, as long
random
as,
two members?
if you bring it back to council and you don't have to have a majority vote, is what I'm saying.
Oh, gotcha.
Okay.
Casey, I'm sorry, who's the first one?
I'd like to see a member of the NADC be required to be on it, so we don't silos of, oh, MEDC focused on transportation, and the chief's got his own opinions on transportation. Well, let's just go along with it.
That's a great point. Cross-pollinating your boards and commissions that's a great point.
We gotta get next week.
Okay, so the reason I want to see a member from MEDC is so we don't have work silos, right? So a lot of times when we have individual committees doing different things, they'll end up with the same ideas, going in different directions, right? They're all trying to focus on the same thing, but they're spending their time doing the same thing as the other committee. And if they just communicate, which never happens, no matter how many times you tell them, like, just communicate, and it happens. So if you just put them on the board and say, oh, well, we're doing that too, and we can talk about it.
So EDC and you said
And
this
a
part.
person who's smart, right? Whether it be the chief or a designee by the chief.
And then three
So
members.
that's even transportation, all the time.
The mayor and two mayors.
And so, as far as the
I
appointment.
think that's it, is to,
We're talking about the mayor,
use it.
two councils, two.
The mayor gets a vote.
So
We
the
still
mayor,
have 5 spots.
yeah, still have 5 spots. So the mayor gets a vote, and then he just needs 2 members of council. So basically, you only need 3 of the 6 members to vote. It's not a majority, it's close.
Very
But what if you need 3 of the 6, what if there's 3 and 3 deadlocked?
You only need 3.
Right, but there's 6 people.
That's why I said you don't need a majority, you only need 2.
So it's whatever, basically that means whatever, if you do have that case, it means whoever the mayor says yes to.
So
It's the
where
mayor
are we
to-
getting these other 3 people?
So those other 3 people from council.
Right.
Applications?
So if 4 people
He's
vote
talking about
no,
council.
He's like when you
The
voted
appointment process.
Joe Smith. So Byron wants Joe Smith.
Okay.
Casey says yes, you say yes. That's 3. If me, Stan, and Cheryl say no, it's yes because Byron had asked for Joe Smith.
So
The mayor,
the mayor
where
has
did
a
Joe
way to vote,
Smith
is
come
what it
from?
is.
So, but I mean, he's
So we
gonna
could
have
do
to
an
apply,
application. We could do an
yeah.
application.
Yeah, we'll
Like
have an
we're doing with
application,
these.
not just, he didn't give his name, yeah, no, there'll be an application process.
So,
It's not just enough for the mayor to do appointment players,
Right.
but he does get a weighted vote. That's
Right.
basically what it is.
so I would like in this short time to get some input. I've already had preliminary discussions both with engineers recommended. They sent me people, one with 30 years of experience, specifically what I was asking for, and others that's kind of an upcomer. So if I had at least one engineer be able to apply, somebody from the police, and he's already got somebody in mind, that would be ideal because they have so much attachment to grants and grant writing and stuff like that that's related to traffic control. Needs help getting people across the street, that would be a viable option. That would be my tendency, but I need, and we don't have to do it right now, but if you all would send me your people, this project, then I would encourage them, I guess is what I'm trying to say, encourage them to apply. Now, with that said, the biggest connection I was able to make was Mob. And once I got to Mob, he had connections to energy. Once I got that connection, that's when things started with 149 with light. That was the magic deal. Okay, so I asked him ahead of time, I said, pray about this, think about this, for being here on Mob connection. He doesn't want to be part of this committee. He wants to make that connection on Washington state levels all the time. But he will be a liaison. He is still that source. So we have that community business developer owner who has connections to the state. I just need y'all's recommendation, staff or otherwise, say, Byron, you not want to consider so-and-so to encourage them. And then hopefully we can send that out in August. And maybe by mid to late August, we'll have it close. Anything else? I want to have a bathroom break.
So what I'll do is come back, I'll make some modifications to it, I'll bring it back to a regular meeting. We can chew on it a little more, if there's other changes you guys want to make, we can talk about that, or we'll approve it at that night. But if you guys are happy with this framework, I'll keep moving on.
Everything else is great to me.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
All right. And we're going to at 5:50.